today changes my whole entire life.
Welcome to Gritability, a podcast about the power of perseverance, overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds to attain the life of your dreams. I'm your podcast host, Adam Clausen, and with me in the studio is the beautiful and ever radiant Raul Clausen.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here. We always talk about how we have firsts on this show, and this is a huge first. Where are we?
We are in BOCA. We're in BOCA, and this is our first time down here, and it is absolutely amazing. Is this studio amazing or what?
It's beautiful. Yeah.
I mean, no offense to Sticky Paws back home, but, you know, we're loving it down here.
We love them both.
Yes. So
Shout out to Podcast Junkies.
yes, grateful to be down here in the studio. With us today is Mr. Raul Lopez.
Hello there. Hi there. Thank you
Hi.
for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on.
It's
This
a
is
real
exciting.
pleasure. Yes.
We
I
also
was excited.
We have another special guest.
We do have a special guest with us, the CEO of our family, the boss, Christian. Yes, there he is. All right. So he's getting a lesson early on. So, Mr. Lopez, you and I had the good fortune to connect some months ago when the organization that I'm working with, Social Purpose Corrections, started. We developed a partnership with a national insurance agency, and my goal is to connect all of those individuals coming out of the system with healthcare coverage under the Affordable Care Act. So it's private healthcare coverage in place of Medicaid. It gives individuals access to specifically the services that are absolutely essential in making that successful transition back into the community: mental health, substance misuse, treatment services, supports, and obviously all of the core components of just good physical health care that a lot of times, individuals go without that sometimes when they're in prison. And there's a lot of things that, they need to get taken care of to start feeling good about themselves and really start reconnecting to the community on the outside. So my goal is to connect with organizations, DOCs, other groups that are doing amazing work assisting with that transition. And I got to be honest, I've heard about the company that you work for and have had the opportunity to meet with some of the leadership over there, but I didn't know the extent of the COC program that you are a part of. And when I met you and some of your colleagues, I was like, man, how do more people not know about this? So what is it that you do over there? Tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day is.
Yeah, something that I'm very passionate about, and anyone that wakes up in the morning and says, oh my God, I have to go to work, that's a terrible thing. I love my job. Because one of the things is it's amazing how we're lowering actually recidivism. We have statistics of the clients that we have. I work for GEO, and it's a global company. They're $2.9 billion company. We have private prisons all over the world. And there used to be a stigma for me. I said, they're exploiting returning citizens, ex-inmates, ex-convicts. And actually not. The owner of the company, the CEO, Mr. Zoli, had a vision that he would help as many people coming back into society as much as possible. And that's why it was such a great thing to partner with you guys, because one of the components, you need housing, clothing, employment, but one of the things is the health. You have a lot of guys who don't get the best health since they're doing time, and then when they get out, they need the proper insurance. So I was happy. You told me one time, Raul, you're killing it. And of course, when I believe in something, and I keep sending guys to you. But yeah, that is our passion. To help reintegrate people back into society, not only to stay out of prison, but to be productive members of that society.
Well, I think it's important because private prisons, you said it's there is a lot of stigma around, there's a lot of misconceptions around private prisons. And ultimately, the organization that I'm with, our goal is to assist with operations of prisons, to do that, to take the efficiencies that private prisons use, bring that back into wellness for staff and for residents. But people look at private prisons and they're like, wow, they're all profit driven. But it's been my experience. I've heard from some individuals who come out and say, man, I had a great experience in private prison. And I'm telling you, a lot of the men that I speak to who are on your caseload rave about you, the work that you've done to assist them in that transition. So I want to applaud Gio for the work that they're doing through this program. And what would you say to those individuals who still have some questions about private prisons?
Well, we all have preconceived ideas. Before I even went to prison, I'm throwing it out there, I'm a returning citizen myself. I always thought that people in prison, they were the scum of the earth, the lowest. And I found some incredible talent, intelligence in prison. And, don't think that the private prison is like I used to think, that we would only be exploiting people coming out of prison. Actually, I know for my company, it is a passion of ours. In fact, the COC program, 95% of those of us, our team, they've all done time. And actually, I've only done 12 years. We have a guy.
Wait. Time out. Did you just say I've only done 12 years?
Well,
Only 12 years.
Compared to.
It's a lot of time.
Yeah, it is a lot of time. And to be honest with you, the only reason I say only because I was supposed to do life sentences. I was never, Ro, I wasn't supposed to be here. So
we've heard that one before.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great place for us to kind of segue into that, because for individuals who look at you now, they hear you, they're like, wow, look at this guy. He's got it put together. He looks good. He speaks well.
Well, you have to speak to my wife, and she'll tell you the truth.
We keep all the secrets, us ride or dies.
But please take us back. Give us a little bit of the background. Tell us about how you ended up, because I heard the charges that you have, but I would love to hear them from you, because I look at you just like I know a lot of people look at me and say, you were in prison for what? Same thing. When I heard that, I was like, Raul did what? So take us back.
What did I get myself into with this show?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people say you're a product of your environment. Not in my case. My father was not an alcoholic or a drug addict. Neither was my mom. They're hardworking people. They own businesses and everything in New York. But when we first got to New York, I was born originally in Cuba, came when I was 4 years old. And because we were one of the first Cuban families in our neighborhood. And because
what year was this?
We're talking 1965. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Gives away my age. I'm 62 years old now.
Okay.
Yeah. And,
62. Man, you look phenomenal.
It's the jail deli.
It is.
That's it. Hamburgers, French fries. It keeps you young. But I was taught differently. And I was a drug addict for 24 years, but I always say worse than any cocaine addiction, any alcohol addiction, is the addiction to money. My brother and I were convinced that if we had enough money, we could solve all our problems. And of course, that's a falsehood. And once you break a taboo and you do something, then it's easier to go to the next level. And but anyway, I was convicted. In 1996, SWAT hit my house with a helicopter. It looked like a scene from a Hollywood movie. And I remember thinking to myself, my life is over. And 57 PBLs, punishable by life felonies, 28 armed robberies, 19 armed kidnappings, armed carjacking, armed burglary with assault and battery. I mean, and it goes on and on. And now I see, as I look back, the depression Because I knew better, Ro.
Yeah.
I remember my dad cornered when the police hit the house, talking to the detectives, and he had a tear in his eye. And mind you, my father was one of those macho guys that never showed emotion. But I remember a tear coming out, and he told the detective, "I didn't raise him to be like this." And I remember one of the greatest pains, more than getting arrested and thrown on the floor and maybe busting the door down, was the guilt, because I love my dad. And since then, he's passed away, and my mom. But it's a positive thing, because we were able to complete the circle. He would visit me. He died before I got out, but we had time to sit down and talk, and it was all water under the bridge. We cried together, hugged, and one of the last things that he said was, "Son, I'm so proud of you." Because, you could pull the wool over a lot of people's eyes, but Mom and Dad know who you are. And he saw the change. He saw the change. So in the middle of the trial, just to, tell you exactly what happened, the judge says, "For some reason, I like the Lopez brothers." Now, that's a miracle in itself.
Yeah, you don't hear that very often
You don't
from
hear
judges.
that. And they gave us, if we wanted to take a plea, 104 years. And what plea is that?
What a deal.
That's a heck of a deal. So we went to trial, and in the middle of the trial, he stopped it and he says, "I am not going to hand you these life sentences. I'm going to put a plea of 12 years on the table." At that moment, the prosecutor came in. He slammed his book down. He says, "Your Honor, this is an atrocity. These men are a menace to society." And he said, I made up my mind.
Wow.
And before we're done, I got to share something that happened with that judge years later. But anyway, my wife, at the time, we divorced since then, but my daughter, my mom, they were all crying out of joy, because 12 years, they knew that there was a high probability I'd never get out. So 12 years was a blessing. It was actually something big. And that's when I realized, we keep hearing this term in the business that we're in, second chances. And I knew that if I didn't do something, I don't know where I would end. So for 5 years, I was in the county. And the judge said this.
What county are we talking about?
Well, Dade County. In fact, the 6th floor, they still call it the House of Pain. One of those gladiator places. And
5 years. For
years.
People, for our audience who do not understand, prison is tough. Being in a county jail with no access to the outside, the yard, limited movement, the food's terrible. I mean, it's just horrific, incredibly stressful. 5 years you endured
5
that.
years.
Why did they leave you there for 5 years?
Because I had so many cases. What happened was they came initially with one case, then they added another, then the third, then the fourth, then the fifth. That's why 57 felonies. It was 6 different cases.
Okay.
And so they just strung me along. And for 5 years, I thought I'd do a life sentence. On that 5th year is when the judge said what he said. Yeah, and my lawyer and my brother's lawyer, I don't know if you remember in '94 when laptops became the hot item. They were selling like hotcakes.
Sure.
So we were actually hijacking trucks and robbing stores that had laptops. And we had a connection in customs. We worked for a crew of about 12 people. And our boss had an export company, and he would export all these laptops and computer parts and so on to Colombia, Brazil, Venezuela, different places. That's why the police were so upset, because they couldn't find any of the merchandise. It wasn't here, and it was going out of the country. So that's what we were doing, and but I'll tell you, Adam, and this is a point I like to make. We never became millionaires or whatever, but we made some money. And I remember having a pocket full of money. We had just bought a car, cash, and I was so depressed. And I remember getting suicidal thoughts and a lot of cocaine and a lot of drugs, which, by the way, Raul and Adam, it's been 26 years that I don't touch any narcotics whatsoever.
Congratulations.
Well, let me
Congratulations,
be
yep.
honest. I had Tylenol 3 days ago. So,
We're with you.
yeah,
Yep.
there you go. But that's basically, what was going on.
Wow.
Was your brother in the same jail as you for those 5 years?
No.
Okay.
Well, we were together in the same cell for about 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah, and
2
and
months of the 5 years.
of the 5 years. Because they keep
Sure.
family members
Yeah.
apart.
Yeah.
And
But you guys were co-defendants.
yeah, co-defendants with 7 other people. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and not that we were such stand-up guys, but we never turned anybody in. The way I felt about it was, I did what I did. Why am I going to ruin somebody else's? So and it incredible that the judge said what he said. And my lawyer couldn't believe it. She says, I've never seen anything like this in the 24 years that I've been a defense lawyer, for the judge to say that. And the prosecutor says, I'm going to appeal this. And he says, you can, counselor, but I've made up my mind. And
Wow.
yeah, phenomenal.
I've never heard of a judge doing that.
No, but good for that judge, because you said it yourself. You weren't stand-up guys, and you deserve to do time, sure. But life for laptops, let's just think about that for a
Yeah,
second, where
yeah.
people who do heinous things get less time.
And
Right,
it
right.
diminishes.
Exactly.
When that happens, it diminishes the punishment for other crimes. I do want to make a point of what you just said, and it's a great distinction. We've heard this before on this show about making the decision not to put someone else in your shoes. And listen, I say this all the time. People can say whatever they want about how they would like to react or respond in a certain situation. But until you're actually in that situation,
That's right.
it's very different when you're literally staring down the barrel of that multiple life sentences, and to say, you know what, I did what I did. I am not going to trade my wrongs, try and put those on someone else to gain benefit for myself. And I do want to make a point, because I feel that's very, very admirable. That speaks to your character. And although I think I heard you acknowledge, like, the things that you did, clearly that's part of your past, something
Right.
that you regret, you weren't at a good place. But that is one good thing. Like, that is a character, an aspect of your character, something that for me, I think means a lot. And being able to take responsibility, in my opinion, for what you've done and not put it on anybody else, speaks to really ownership. When you take that ownership, you take back control of your circumstances, of your life, of determining where you go from that point. And I think it's a hard point, because our system has been manipulated by, the authorities, whether that's law enforcement and the courts, and everyone now is just accustomed to trying to get everyone to cooperate, simply to get the next conviction, the next case, as much time as possible, instead of allowing someone to simply accept responsibility. And by doing that, like, you've broken down a lot of individuals, you've broken up families, you've created more harm than good. The end does not justify the means. And that's just my little side note there to applaud
right.
you for making that decision. That's an incredibly, incredibly tough decision to make.
Well, I believe that's where rehabilitation really starts. You use the key word, Adam: ownership, accountability. I believe that, we start to gain more identity, self-worth, self-love when you actually look in the mirror. I mean, the alcoholic will tell you his recovery started when he admitted that he was an alcoholic. So to recognize, I wasn't raised this way. I take full responsibility for that. The victim, let's leave that mentality out of there. And I'll share something that a lot of people say, Raul, you share that, and I have no problems with it because I believe I've healed from that. But when I was 4 years old, I was sexually molested by a friend of the family's. And now as I look back in hindsight, that's where all the rage and the anger came from. Used to be very violent. I'm a heck of a nice guy, but it was misplaced anger. It was the issues that I was dealing with. Because at 4 years old, my God, a little tot, I didn't even know what was going on. And, I am not a victim. What happened, happened. Listen, life is life. Good things happen to bad people, bad things happen to good people, and that's just the way it is. And for me to keep blaming, I believe you're stuck and you will not progress, you will not grow as a human being, as a person, and then you're not good to anybody. That's why I had 2 failed marriages before then. I always say, you cannot give what you don't have. So how can I actually love somebody if I didn't love myself? So now I have a wife. I've been married 14 years, and that's my baby. If she's looking.
Look at that smile. As soon as you mentioned her, man, you lit up. I love that.
And if I get out of line, she has a heck of a right hook. So, yeah.
I know.
Yeah, she beats me, I admit it. No, but so it's been a process. It's been a I've been out now 17 years after doing the 12 years, and it wasn't easy in the beginning. I'm pretty sure you can share experiences that it's an uphill climb in the beginning. And when I got out, they didn't have this program that I work for, the reentry program. So I wouldn't get hired. My mom had Alzheimer's, went through a lot of tough times. But here we are. And the future's bright, Adam.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yes.
When did you, because first of all, what you said was beautiful. And I think so many people can learn such a huge lesson from what you said about not being a victim. I mean, that takes so much introspection and so much maturity, because a lot of people, especially when they do time and that much time and live in hell for 5 years, you could go one way, which a lot of people choose to do, the prison way, understandably. But when did you start the turnaround for your life? Was it while you were inside?
Yes.
Okay.
It was about the second week that I was there. And I'm not here to proselytize or throw scriptures, but just so that the audience knows, I'm an ordained pastor, and I was a missionary pastor for 5 years. And I remember seeing this tall guy with these big muscles and a big tattoo. And every day, this is in the county jail, he would gather everyone together, and there'd be blacks, whites, Hispanics, Asians, and they'd study this little book, and he was having a Bible study. And one particular day, he says, you have a vocation on your life. I really feel that you're going to help a lot of people one day. And I remember that impacted me. Said this was weird to me because I don't come from a church-going family or whatever. But I remember, crying out, if there really is a God up there, I want to change. And I remember feeling there was a shift, something happened. And come on, let's not get mystical. I didn't see no lightning bolts coming through the window or earthquakes. But I knew that there was hope and that something could change. So all the time that I did in there, I was taking classes, staying away from the drugs, staying away from everything. Homosexuality is prevalent. Now you have to be politically correct. I have nothing against homosexuality, but that just wasn't my thing. And those are a lot of the things that'll get you into trouble in prison. And but when he told me that and I made a decision, I remember thinking, I need to change, and whoever's up there, help me. And things started to change. And by the way, my brother is also a pastor, and he works for the largest prison ministry in the United States, and he's over 5 states.
Wow.
So yeah, he impacts hundreds and hundreds of, and this is what we do, man. I didn't know that this was a calling, that this was a purpose. And a lot of the guys that are watching now who are doing time maybe, or who have done time, And you know it, Adam. You could probably attest to this, and you probably have experiences. We need a purpose.
Yeah.
We need to be focused. It's not just about making money, eating, and going on vacation. And that's why this is my passion. I really do enjoy it. I made the comment not too long ago. I spoke at a prison, and I said that there is no drug, there is no amount of money, there is no sex that can top the satisfaction that you get when you help someone and see them come along. I got a lot of clients who are opening up businesses, they're getting married, and you'd never know. Armed robber, bank robber. I mean, so yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
I love it, man, because
Yeah.
I'm always curious to hear, you know, as I've said, like I've studied successful people. I want to know, especially even before I got out, like how were you able to you know, defy statistics, the rate of recidivism being so high, people coming back, falling right back into the same routines. Like, what did you do that set you apart? And one of those key elements is finding that purpose. And so I love that you were able to find that early on and really focus all of your time and attention on that. I'm always curious to hear when I meet successful individuals what that thing was. You know, for me, I was able to find a passion for fitness. And then the further I got into that, when I started sharing it with others, I said, this is my purpose. Like, how come I didn't find this earlier?
Right.
But I found it in prison. And it's really what gave me focus. That purpose is what got me through that. You know, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning.
Right.
Having that purpose can get you through just about anything. And although you said it was only 12 years, 12 years is a long time.
Yes, it is.
It's a long time. Over that 12 years, what are you most proud of accomplishing while you were incarcerated?
It's interesting. We had talked about that I was sexually molested. It so happens, anyone who's done time, you have to be very careful who you let into your circle. You know, I was always on guard. You're in prison. But there was a guy that I used to play basketball with all the time. Heck of a nice guy. I mean, very intelligent, articulate. We talk about sports, music. And after about 2 years that we'd go to lunch together and we became pretty good friends, I asked him, so-and-so, if you don't mind me asking, what are you here for? And he says, Raul, I usually don't share that, but really, we've become close, and I sexually molested my daughter, and my ex-wife turned me in, and I remember this cold feeling coming over me, and I didn't realize that what was happening at the moment, it was a way like life was allowing me to heal of my personal thing. And I was able to talk to him. I didn't talk to him at that moment. I said, I gotta go. I had to process this. But the next day he says what happened, and then I explained to him. But I remember that helped a lot for my healing. Amazing. I didn't look for it. I don't know why. But I'd meet people even after I got out. And I'd just have this feeling, and I'd say, excuse me, so-and-so, did you have an experience where you were younger? Raul, how did you know that? And a particular lady that was my supervisor started crying. And I said, listen, I've been there. But, you know, I suggested therapy. I suggested certain, and we talked through it. But you were saying things that really were a plus for me to help others. I believe, and listen, I'm not holier than thou or more spiritual or more disciplined than anyone. I believe when you've been broken, then you can actually see what's important becomes important. It's not about the fancy car. Hey, listen, I love a nice house. I love a nice car. But it's really about helping others and family. I mean, Christian, that's a big deal, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you did a good job there. Yeah, you guys. But and that was a real positive in that sphere as far as people who've been molested, who've gone through that, and and then helping others. I remember I would do Bible studies, I would counsel other people, and that just kept me out of trouble. Yeah.
Well, it's definitely finding a way to derive that purpose and make the most of your time, especially when you have that much time to do. You know, it's different when you're around guys who are just counting down the days.
Right.
And you have so many days that you can't do that. So it takes a different mindset. It takes a different level of gritability. You have to know how to persevere. You have to know how to deal with those environments with other people that you don't necessarily get along with, and believe that there is something better on the other side.
That's right.
So you get out and you get a fresh start. You get that second chance. As you said, there were some challenges. What year did you get out? What year would this be?
2008. Yeah.
2008.
From 96 to 2008. From 96 to 2001, I was in the county, and then I did the other 7 years up in DOC, in
the
Department
prison.
of Corrections. Yeah, in the prison.
Okay. So 2008, we know the timeline because Ro and I got together in 2009.
Oh, okay.
And it was like, even then, 2009, 2010, there wasn't a whole lot of talk of criminal justice reform, reentry. There wasn't a lot of supports. So you said it was challenging getting out. It definitely wasn't. There was no COC program back then.
No, not at all. Yeah, when I get out, my dad had passed away, and my mom had end stages of Alzheimer's. So I had to feed my mom, change her diapers, you know, she'd urinate and poop on herself and so on. And a lot of people say, wow, but actually, believe it or not, this might sound crazy, but it was really a blessing for me because I had let go of the guilt. You cannot continue to beat yourself and get anywhere. So I had years to process, and I had forgiven myself. But I wanted to give back to my mom, and this was my opportunity. I believe life gave me the opportunity to care for her. And so when she passed away, I was really, really at peace. And when I get out, I mean, she'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to school. She's 80-something years old, and she'd go back. And nobody would hire me, so I'd get up early in the morning. I don't know how it is in Las Vegas or other places, but here, you hang around the Home Depot early in the morning and trucks will come by. And
I think
you
that's
want to work?
everywhere. Yep.
Okay, you want to work. And I remember getting exploited. I mean, getting 40, 50 bucks, calluses on my hands.
Yeah.
But you do what you have to do because, like the podcast, Gritability, you had to have the grit to say, I am not going back. Come hell or high water, I am not going back. And believe me, a lot of temptations came along the way. But I said, I'm not going back, so I did what I had to do. But eventually, I got a better job. My mom passed away, and it wasn't a negative because we were able to heal a lot of things. I was able to care for her. My brother and I decided we're not going to put her in a nursing home. And we cared for her as much as we could. In the end, we did have to put her in a care facility, but she only was there for 2 weeks, and she passed away. She passed away in her sleep, and I was okay. I was okay. Listen, when you can reconcile, take responsibility for your past, look the other person, make amends, and say, I'm sorry. But not only the gift of gab. I mean, you have to walk it. And after years, they saw family members, friends. And that's a big deal to me, Adam. You know, we agreed that I would be here at a certain time. And when I saw the clock, I said, I don't want to be late because my word is my bond. It's a big deal. I mean, you know, credibility, integrity, those things that never meant diddly squat to me in the past. And then how can I preach and tell the other guy, do what you need to do if I'm not living it?
There you go, right there, modeling that character, that integrity. Those are things that we talk about because honestly, you know, I went to prison, I was still a child. very, my word, I kept it on certain things, right? Not on everything. So some of those lessons I had to learn, and, they were harder lessons to learn.
Right.
But really, you're in a position now where you get to impact a lot of lives. And because of everything you've experienced and because of your willingness to be so open, so transparent and authentic in sharing that, there is great power within that. And that's what I have heard from the individuals that I've had the opportunity to just talk to, even briefly, that you've worked with, to know that because of that, you're able to connect with people, to let them know that you care because you've been through it. It's different, right? And that's really what we need. And really your success at this point, looking at you, you'd never see that you were in prison. Obviously, these years since you've been out, things have gone pretty well.
Yeah.
You're married?
Yes, married. Love the job that I do, the people that I work for. Before that, when I did 5 years as a missionary pastor in Guatemala, which, by the way, as a side note, I have to mention this. In Guatemala, prostitution is legalized. So you could walk into a bar and pick out a girl. They have brothels. So at the church that my wife and I were pastoring, we had a lot of ex-hookers who were converting and changing their lives. And you don't see them, but I have a bunch of tattoos from the prison days. And we were doing a TV show and a radio show. And then you had a lot of these guys. Also, I don't know if you've ever heard of MS-13.
Sure.
They're these guys, you don't even know who they are, and they're chopping heads off, literally. They found heads in trash cans and so on over there, because it's in the border of Mexico and Guatemala. And to see these guys coming into the church and changing their lives, it was phenomenal. My wife and I lived in a 10 by 20 little room, but the satisfaction and the reward was to see lives being changed. And
That sounds like a cell.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Your wife got to share a cell with you.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at my wife going,
Yeah.
I wonder what that would be like.
Right, yeah. And we'd get a small salary. But see, I have a wife. That's why it's so important. I look at you guys and I think it's a wonderful thing when you share the same vision. I mean, she's a person that's been through a lot also. She came from Cuba, but she came in 2000, so she suffered what a communist regime is like. And she got here very grateful. We met, and we just had the same vision of helping people. So when I said, let's do this, she says, let's do it. And that's a big deal there, So, she was with me, and we were able to help a lot of people. We actually opened up a school for little kids, teenagers, and adults. The illiteracy rate in Guatemala is very high, so we had people, we partnered with local schools and colleges to come and teach them to read. We'd feed about 150 underprivileged families every day, and good food too,
Wow.
chicken. And when the people over there saw what was going on, we had, we had entrepreneurs, all kinds of business people just donating, and the money came in. And all I was getting was a $500 salary a month, and my wife also. So it wasn't about me lining my pockets. We were helping. As it came in, we helped a lot of people, which, by the way, it's still there now. We trained pastors, local pastors, and left the big ministry over there, and it's still going. So, but then it was time to come back. We all go through, how can I say, seasons. You have a season to be a dad, whatever, a husband, and that season was over. So we came back, and now I love what I do. Yeah, and my wife, she mentors women, and we do marriage counseling. I do drug interventions also.
I feel like we probably should have had your wife here.
Yeah.
That's my oversight. I had a feeling too.
The only thing is we'd need a translator because her English is very limited. But yeah.
I would just love to have the two of you in the room because the way that you light up when you talk about her, like, I could tell it's the same thing.
Yeah, sure. And you guys know, I mean, we're old enough to know in the beginning it's all about chocolates and flowers. You know, I remember, oh, my heart pitter-pattered. And as you get older, it's about commitment. And there are times, you know, listen, gray hair, I got wrinkles now. We're not the same we look like when we first met, but there's something deeper and stronger there, you know. And to share these experiences, that's what it's all about.
I love that.
I didn't get chocolate and flowers. This will make you laugh. I got toilet paper roses, though.
Really? Hey, that's cool. Yeah.
My heart's still pitter-pattered. I'm still here, so.
There you go.
Yeah, we had to make the best of it.
Yeah.
We,
No, you sent me some cool gifts.
Yeah, our honeymoon stage was, you know, via email and through the prison visiting room, and really, although we didn't live in something the size of a cell together, we had to figure it out very similarly, you know, how to build that foundation that you know that this is the person that you want to be with the rest of your life. And that's why when when I transitioned home, I mean, I don't know where I'd be if it wasn't for her, because she literally held my hand every step of the way. And I am so, so grateful for that, especially after, 2 decades.
Right.
There were some bumps there, but she was always right there with me. And, everybody needs that level of support. And when they don't have a significant other, it becomes even more imperative that they have someone that they know that they can count on. And I know that that's much of what you do. I mean, I cannot understate the significance of your role, which you're doing, through COC. It's absolutely amazing. I'm excited to come over there on Monday.
Oh, most definitely, yes.
and spend some time with you and the other individuals who similarly have that lived experience, who are helping others transition. But before we get there, what's next for you? What do you see on the horizon? What are you most looking forward to?
To be honest with you, what I'm doing, I love, and I work for a great company. I mean, they roll out the red carpet for us. The COC program is the baby now of GEO. We've set precedents that people haven't seen before. So I'm seeing this blossom into something. We'll see what's going to happen. But anything to do with returning citizens. I also deal with a lot of people, who've been addicted to drugs and so on, and that's very satisfying. That's what I see happening in the future. I've considered and I've thought about it, maybe buying a home and using as a halfway house for people who get out. But there's a lot of options out there. But right now, what I'm doing is what I love. Adam, do you mind if I just ask a question real quick? I'm going to play now interviewer, and I'm going to ask Ro. You meet him in prison, and you know that he wasn't in there for stealing gum from a public supermarket. What was your first impression? The reason I ask that, because there is a lot of wives and girlfriends out there who might be going through something similar, and there's a lot of fear. What went through your mind, if you don't mind me asking?
No, so I'll give you a little background before I answer that.
Okay.
When I first started going through it, it was a girlfriend of mine, her boyfriend got locked up, and he was with Adam. They set us up. That's the long story short. And I had nobody in my, quote, real life, the outside life, that understood. And when I tried to tell people, because I was proud, I was in this new relationship, you want to sing it from the rooftops, you've been there. And people would look at me funny. And at best, they would just kind of smile and nod and then talk behind my back. And at worst, they would say the nastiest things to my face that I wouldn't say to somebody in an outside relationship.
Wow.
Why did they think that they were validated because he was in prison? So I went online to look, there have to be other people out there like me. And I did. And this is 2009, and social media wasn't like it is today back then. And all I found were a couple of little groups where people were kind of glorifying and glamorizing that life. They wanted him to come right back home so they could go and hit the street running again together.
Right.
That revolving door. So I said, there has to be better. And if there isn't, I'm going to create it. And I started a support group called Strong Prison Wives and Families. That is now a nonprofit. So I try to help those people because we get every end of the spectrum. What do I wear to visit? I don't want to get turned away. Or I haven't heard from him for a couple of days. Is he dead? You know, what could it be?
Right.
Or I met him on the inside. I think he's using me. Or he's doing this, that, the other. You know, she's being basically abused from behind the wall, controlled from behind the wall.
Right.
And we have to tell her it's time to step away. So I do help people in that situation. But to answer your question, he had a friend that had built a website for him. And he wrote all the content, and it was probably 5 or 6 pages. And so I was pointed to that website because at first when my girlfriend was like, hey, you know, do you want to write to him? I said, hell no, for what? You know? And then I found out he was a lifer, and I was like, really? No. And then I slept on it. And the next morning I woke up and I looked at that website. And I saw that what happened was he didn't deserve a life sentence. He deserved to be in prison. And just like you said about yourself, I wasn't, you know, a choir boy. I wasn't an altar boy. That's not why I'm in prison. I was a bad guy. I deserved to do time, but I don't deserve a life sentence. And I don't want to say I pitied him because I never did. I think that's the lowest thing you could do for somebody. But I thought, you know, he could use a friend. He seems like such a good person.
Compassion.
Yeah, compassion. And that's when we started corresponding. And it just was one thing led to another.
And it helps he's not bad looking.
He's not bad looking. It does help. And so when we started corresponding, I felt myself, you know, those little butterflies. Because at that point, he had gotten email in Allenwood. They were piloting an email program.
Okay.
So I would see his name in my inbox, and I would get butterflies. And I'm like, uh-oh.
Wow.
Uh-oh,
What's
this isn't
going on
good.
here?
Yeah, what's going on? So we decided to go for a visit.
Yeah.
And then it was game over at that point.
Game over. I believe destiny. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not a coincidence. And well, thank you. Thank you
course,
for your
yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
When I first shared with my wife, my present wife, I said, you know, I was in prison for this and for that. She looked at me and she says, they say you can't go with your heart, you have to use reasoning, but I don't believe it's just my heart. I have this feeling everything's going to be okay.
Aww.
So, and here we are. And so.
And that's how many years now?
It's been 14 years, yeah.
14 years.
You guys are married now?
Yeah.
No, I know you're married, but how long?
Well, we've been together, what, like 14, 15 years? It all blends together, something like that. But we're only married for, it'll be 2 years in February.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't want to marry him on the inside.
Yeah. No, you're right. And
Agreed,
you
yeah.
said something very key that, you know, as we talk, we're talking to an audience out there that might be looking. There are a lot of shysters who are using women. They play upon their emotions. So that says a lot about your identity and who you are. You weren't going to allow that to happen.
Sure.
And the proof is in the pudding here. You guys are. And, you know, great product there.
Thank you. Yeah, and you said it earlier that you guys need a purpose on the inside, and that became my purpose on the outside because I figured if his life sentence held up and he never came home, at least I was doing something constructive with this time. You know, and I just love that you love what you do so much. Even I wanted to say this when you first started talking, is that I always took, I don't want to say offense, that's kind of a little bit of a stretch, but I never loved when people came either to my organization or in the prison and they didn't have experience and they tried to tell people what to do kind of out of a textbook.
Right, exactly.
Because you've been there and you know exactly what these people have
Right.
gone through, and I admire you so much for doing that because those people deserve that and you can help them in a way that, you know, somebody out of a textbook can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said, being transparent and so on, that's really the power when you interact with guys, you know. It's funny, I speak in a lot of prisons, and usually any prison that I go to in Florida, there's a guy there that I did time with.
Yeah.
And when the other guys who don't know me say, he was in here, yeah, and he was my cellmate or whatever, and then, you know, you have their attention. And but you know what? I have to make a point here. I think we all have a tendency to project an image. you know, how we're so cool, you know, like when you start dating, you know,
Sure.
I put on the right cologne, the right shirt, you know, I want to impress her. Then as time goes on, you know, then you see the real colors. I have to be honest. The best way I can put it is I do not live in the past, but I don't forget where I came from. And that really keeps you humble. I mean, I can't afford to forget what I went through, what I put my family through. And that just keeps me focused, you know. So it's not that I'm so disciplined and so cool. It's just, I mean, when you've been broken, and I mean, I planned my suicide, to be honest. And there was a time where I thought, you know, somebody who even thinks of suicide, they're weak. Like you said, you have to be in those shoes. It's so easy just to spout out of your mouth. And so that just keeps me going, you know. Meeting you guys, that was a big deal for me. You know, we share the same interest and so on. You said 12 years. Adam, you did 20. I don't know if I let the cat out of the bag, but 20
No.
years,
no.
that's no walk in the park.
Yeah.
And a life sentence, my God. So, yeah.
Yeah, everybody on our show knows the time that I received, the time that I did. And really, I mean, that's the purpose. That's why we started this podcast.
Yeah.
So that we could highlight other amazing stories, individuals who, you know, went through similar circumstances. And I think everybody wants to know, how did you get through it? Like, when you hear about facing a life sentence, to most people, that's like, that thought itself is overwhelming. And then, okay, you get 12 years, like, you're relieved. You've got 12 years. That's a long time to do anyways. How do you get through that?
Because especially at that age, that feels like a life sentence.
Oh, God,
of course, sure.
And then to go on and to find your sense of purpose, to be able to use that to help others, that's amazing. To have a life, to have relationships, and to speak openly about all of those things that you overcame, like, that's the human aspect, right? And a lot of times when we see examples of success, I mean, this is, you know, frequent in the media, you see individuals who, quote unquote, have made it. Like, you see the end result. You don't understand what they went through. And I think it's imperative that for those individuals who are going through the greatest struggles, who are coming out of incarceration, who are dealing with substance misuse, who are dealing with mental health issues, to hear from others that say, I was there. Like, I struggled too. I went through it. I came out the other side. And this is where I'm at. Like, you can have an amazing life too. I know for me, that was a place where I found great inspiration on the inside. And I, you know, grabbed on to those examples of success. I was able to build relationships with some pretty incredible people. But I'll tell you this, what I have learned since is that every single person that I was able to connect with, that I saw as being super successful, that I knew would overcome challenges, still had lingering residual things that they were still dealing with. Some of them 30 years later. 30 years later, there's still aspects of prison trauma that, you know, continue to affect them. And I can say sincerely at this point, I don't have anything affecting me. But again, I credit her. I credit her with being the solid foundation that has kept me steady. My family support. I'm fortunate both of my parents are still here. I was able to do that, build, you know, make amends with all of those people in my life that I needed to settle things. Very, very fortunate to be able to do all of that. But the reality is, most of us that come out still have some issues that we are challenged with, that we're going to need support with. Is there anything that you are currently at a place where you're like, you know what, this is something that I'm still working on, I'm still striving towards, and it's a challenge to me?
It's not an issue, but I know it's there. Let me give the analogy. You have a tiger in a cage and you just don't let that tiger out of the cage. When you build a defense mechanism on how to deal with things with anger, rage, and violence, and you do that for so long, then it takes a lot of work. I believe that if you need to go to therapy, then go to therapy. I also believe we're tripartite people where we're not only flesh and bone, we have emotions, and there's a spiritual side. So whatever your belief is, and like I say, I don't proselytize. In fact, one of the things that a lot of people tell me, I really appreciate, Raul, that you're not preaching at me or judging me. See, I don't know a religious God. I just wanted to change, and I found strength there. But do whatever you have to do. But you said something very key that eventually I was going to touch upon it at one point or another. Accountability, to surround yourself with certain people. And we're not talking about placaters that they'll tell you what you want to hear. I have guys that'll tell me, hey, Raul, what the hell's going on? What were you thinking? And they'll call me on it. And I know they care for me and they love for me, so I'm going to listen. I might not like it initially. I mean, I don't like anybody to call me on my stuff, but we need that. And once we think, no man is an island and we could do it alone, that's why you keep looking at your wife and you point, we cannot do it alone. We need that support group. And even after years, because, I know a lot of guys who've been out 5, 6 years, but 17 years is a substantial amount of time, never went back to jail, never got in trouble, haven't done any drugs, and I attribute that to people that are around me. And I'm also very selective. I remember as a kid, I was always a follower. That's how I started doing drugs at 11 years old. I was a little kid. I want to be part of the gang, but you gain some identity, and you have people who care about you. And, I'm going to be very careful who I let in my circle. I have a lot of associations, but a true friend, I could count on my hand, and that's very important. Yes.
I was just going to say, there are individuals who are part of our circle, guys that I did time with, an administrator who was in one of the prisons where, I became a certified coach on the inside. She became a coach on the outside. That's the foundation of our communication. And we're able to work through. It's not therapy, but it's...
But in a way it is, I guess, huh? Yeah.
It's mutually beneficial. We're supportive of one another, and we both are open to it, to supporting one another through that. So that's been a key component. But I love what you said about having those accountability partners, having individuals in your circle who will call you on your stuff, right? And when they ask, hey, is everything good? And you're like, yeah, it's great. They're like, no, it's not.
I know you.
No, it's not. You need those people, Those people are absolutely vital in helping you get to where you really want to be in life. Not just staying on track, but really living into your full potential, right? Exactly. Those are the people that are going to help get you there. And I think most people shy away from that, which is why I'm fascinated with individuals who've gone through some really, really tough stuff, because I would say we're made of something different. Not necessarily by choice, right? We made some bad choices, but it's through what we've gone through. You grow through what you go through, right? We have been forced to evolve, to grow, to figure it out. And that's why it's so incredible to be able to spend time with you, get some of your background. And I learned all sorts of great things about you. Most importantly, that we need to meet your wife.
Okay.
We're definitely going to make it a point to do that.
Definitely. I'll just translate for her. Yeah.
That'd be awesome. I mean,
she understands a lot, but yeah.
We would definitely love to meet her. We've really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better. Before we get up out of here, is there anything that you would like to promote? Because I know that you have a podcast.
Right. We do a podcast. All of us that do the podcast have done time, and it's called Death or Prison Podcast. And we've done segments in prisons, We interviewed the captain of a SWAT team. That's interesting, Adam, that after all these years, it used to be my mentality, us against them, it's the police. And actually to have, associations and friends who are law enforcement, complete turnaround. But anyway, that's the podcast that we do, and we really enjoy it, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. We got to check out a little bit of that. We're definitely going to dive back in and watch more of those episodes. It's been great spending time with you today, Raul.
No, the pleasure's been mine. The pleasure's been mine. Kristen is out now.
He's out. The boss did not make it through the entire episode, but man, we appreciate all of you. We love you guys. And we will see you back here on the next episode of Gritability.